after almost 2 years since this movie came out, it still leaves a great impression of what I enjoyed from Steven Universe as a whole. From its characters, its songs, not to mention most of the episodes that I have yet to talk about aside from the Connie stuff. I really consider Steven Universe the movie a great way to have the characters return after almost a year of absence. This movie premiered in September, so many months after the finale of Change Your Mind, along with 3 months before Future's premiere. And picking this movie over the episodes from the original and Future, I picked the right choice, mainly the fact that there's so many qualities in this movie that I admire the most. Granted, there are a few problems, but at the same time, people who reviewed this movie over the last 2 years had the same issues that I'm having, but I'll go get to those issues later. If there's one thing I can give this movie some credit, is the fact that without the time skip, this movie will probably be mostly problematic for how things did evolve over the 2 years. I mean, granted, the whole diamond situation between Blue, White, and Little Diamond is still questionable, but at the same time, everything else in this movie, it somehow worked out. If we spend the majority of this movie seeing Steven still at the same age as in the original, I'm pretty sure that this movie won't work out. I gotta be really honest with you. The idea of having the characters grown up is something I'm usually against in the past, but looking at movies like these along with other projects, I think it actually sums up of what the characters need to deal with the more they get older. Mainly for what Steven is dealing with, he has become the savior of the galaxy, and considering that he's gonna go against another gem who is completely corrupted and really demented, I'm pretty sure it would have been a lot more darker if we actually saw this image of young Steven being hanging over the town of Beach City with Spinel preparing to let go of a 12 or 14-year-old boy. That just really sums up how much that they probably want to do the time skip in order to have Steven go through the situation with Spinel at the end of the movie. And since I've mentioned her name already in this video, let me talk about Spinel. Spinel is the major highlight throughout this entire movie, well, aside from the songs, but I'll get to that later. Out of all the villains that I've seen from Steven Universe when it comes to their motivations and their development, they do not compare to what Spinel is in this movie, mainly for how she tried to erase the other gems' memories involving Steven, and the fact that Steven managed to erase Spinel's memories and we get to see the majority of the film seeing her being her playful self. It actually made this movie a lot more interesting to actually see her going through her original phase that she was when she was with Pink Diamond during those years before, or hundreds or thousands of years before. That just really shows how much that her character like this just isn't what she was when Steven met her the first time. And the more I think about it, if we actually see Spinel in her new form for the majority of this movie, then I'm pretty sure that she will probably instantly destroy Steven right away instead of just completely stalling time. If she didn't get her memories deleted, then I'm pretty sure that would have been the case. And I'm actually thankful that they actually took that route instead of just having her mostly being fully evil all the way through. And besides, if they actually took the different route of having Spinel being evil all the way through, then I'm pretty sure that the drift away sequence, along with the flashback between Spinel and Pink Diamond, wouldn't be as effective as it was since the movie premiered back in 2019. And I'm actually kind of thankful for it because we could get to see the emotions from Spinel once she found out that Pink Diamond was messing with her after so many centuries. And considering that Steven is actually aware that his mother was like this after all these years, I'm always wondering what it felt like if we actually see Steven face off with Pink Diamond in the show. Granted, it never happened, but if it actually did, I'm pretty sure that the writers or the crewverse of Steven Universe would have made that type of episode full of focus. But considering of how Change of Mind delivered, along with most of the mistakes that they did in future, I'm pretty sure that they didn't know how to handle it when they keep rushing everything out the door. Let me get into the whole amnesia thing with the other gems, since that Spinel erased the memories. At first, it's mostly predictable because we've seen amnesia in the past, but since this is focusing on gems instead of human characters, they actually made these amnesia gems really great to watch, especially Paul being Greg's assistant after he summoned her. Granted, it wasn't intentional, but at the same time, Paul will always act this way if someone summons her for the first time. Amethyst's amnesia in this movie, well, I don't consider my favorite out of the three amnesias from Paul and Garnet, but I can still say that it's actually kind of cool to see her going through so many phases. During her past, she isn't really into the world, and before Steven got into her life, she just isn't mature enough to handle most of the stuff around Earth. Let me just say that the episode centering around Amethyst's past is a good summary of what Amethyst is when it comes to her development as the series continues. And considering I've watched all the episodes including this movie, all the characters in this movie are properly executed to be part of one of the most important scenes, especially Peridot, Lapis, and Bismuth, but I'll get to those characters later. For right now, let's go talk about Garnet, or in this case, Sapphire and Ruby. The only way to get Garnet back to the way she was is to not only have her regain her memories, but also have Ruby and Sapphire to be together. Steven tries different ways to make that happen, but even though when he succeeds, he still needs to find a different way to get Garnet's memories to be returned. And let me just say that since that Garnet is the most developed character out of Paul and Amethyst, I have to admit, the way that Garnet gets her memories back at the end is really worth it, especially of how difficult it is, considering that Garnet is still a different gem compared to Sapphire and Ruby, even though they're fused together. I can understand that fusion requires a different person entirely when it comes to combining two gems together. And this is one of the reasons why I enjoyed this movie, is where they take ideas from previous seasons and execute them in this amnesia plot. Well, Steven has to deal with the fact that his friends, his gem friends, have their memories erased, and they have a long history with the whole gem empire. The one time in this movie is almost perfection, because there's not a single moment in this movie that is considered filler. Regardless, when it comes to other movies based off of cartoons have zero filler in it, and it does have some kind of purpose, they didn't do a lot of attention to detail to what this movie did. And even though I may show favoritism, I did see so many movies based off of cartoons that did have a good execution, but considering that we're watching a movie that has a very strong fan base along with so many memorable characters, this movie can easily trump all those movies. If you seriously want me to see which movie I ranked when it comes to based off of cartoons, that will be in the near future, because as of now, I'm still considering on which movie is superior. But then again, I'm one of those people who haven't watched all the movies like Regular Show the movie, and possibly all the other movies based off of cartoons in the past, so at the same time I have to watch those if I want to make my point clear to say that this movie is better than all those. Anyway, Steven in this movie Since people have been addressing that his appearances in the future is completely different compared to how he acts in this movie, let me remind you that it's been like 2 years and there was not a lot of havoc going on over those last 2 years. The struggle that Steven is dealing with in this movie is the fact that another villain that Pink Diamond has caused is going after him, considering that he didn't realize that there was more people that Pink Diamond has messed around with when it comes to manipulation. And when he's maturing in this movie after 2 years, that's probably because he hasn't dealt with trauma yet. By this point, everything is working out, and I'm pretty sure that the time skip after this movie and into Steven Universe's future might be a couple of months or weeks, but depending on how much time it happened afterwards, Steven, before this whole crisis happened with Spinel, he is thankful that everything is just completely back to normal. And let me remind you that Steven was still a child in the original, and then when he got older, he still didn't do much. He didn't go to school, he didn't even make any more friends other than gems, and the fact that he really didn't have the capacity to understand what people are feeling whenever he makes the next moves, which is what he's been doing in future. I would make reviews of episodes from future, but at the same time, there was probably a lot that I didn't talk about when I did the comparison between Change Your Mind and Future's finale. Granted, I could have done more in depth, but at the same time, it will probably be more of a Steven Universe original series versus Future, which wouldn't be a good comparison, since that Future is mostly a one-season epilogue. And considering that Spinel changed once we got into Future, I'm going to assume that they pretty much didn't know what to do with the pairing between Steven and Spinel after this movie. Granted, they had a limited time to completely do Future after the movie, since that Rebecca Sugar wanted to wrap things up with the movie, but on the other hand, I'm pretty sure that it wouldn't kill them to actually have Spinel still dealing with so much trauma after being abandoned over so many centuries. Getting into the supporting characters like Lapis, Peridot, Bismuth, and Connie, who appears in the beginning and towards the end of the film, I'm kind of thankful that they don't get a lot of screen time. If they did, then they will probably drag out the movie longer and also making it unfocused. I get the impression that some of these characters got development off screen when it comes to Lapis and Peridot's relationship, but the thing is, I'm pretty sure that those types of developments would have been better off in episodes. Granted, making the 6th season before this movie is a bad idea, considering that everything is mostly patched up when it comes to saving the galaxy, but on the other hand, this movie is mainly focusing on Steven's conflict with Spinel, who is completely seeking revenge on him. Now, let's get into probably one of the issues I have with this movie. And it's the fact that the giant drill didn't cause a lot after the events of this movie. Ignoring the fact that Spinel got this giant drill from the planet that she was on, but considering that we don't get to see what the Earth is like when it comes to how it's being injected with this type of liquid, I'm pretty sure that this should have led to an episode in Steven Universe Future where the other characters need to fix the planet in order to put it back to the way it was. But apparently, after seeing the reprise song of this movie, nothing really happened. And that's mostly a shame, because we could have seen more characters like Lapis and Lion, along with Connie, going to different places and saving other people's lives. Granted, the main priority is to save Beach City, but I'm pretty sure that even if this movie is longer as it needs to be, it would have been more good and probably more exciting to see other places that we've seen from the show and put them in some kind of loose to make this movie a lot more memorable. I did state that adding more subplots is a bad idea, but on the other hand, I didn't mention anything about going to different places. Granted, there was more to discuss on what's happening in the location where all the havoc is causing, but on the other hand, this movie is also the point where we don't get to see so many places. We didn't get to see the barn in Future, nor Empire City, or any of the other places aside from Beach City in Homeworld. I can pretty guarantee you that there's gonna be so many newcomers who watch the original are gonna go into this movie and expected to see old locations from other places. Granted, that's expecting too much, but with opportunities involving this could benefit from it. But anyway, I've saved probably the best for last, but also mostly the worst for last. The worst part is that there are 16 songs. 16 songs. I didn't watch any Disney movies whatsoever when it comes to the Renaissance, and they did not have as many songs as 16 in one movie. Every time I usually think about this, I would easily think that the songs are really good, but at the same time, it didn't need to be all in one movie, to the point that like 75% of this movie is mainly catered to musical numbers. I'm not trying to be a downer or being rude to musicals, but if Adventure Time had a movie, I'm pretty sure that they won't have this many songs. In some of the episodes, they have one song per episode, and I'm pretty sure that with the amount of songs that this movie has, they could have saved those songs for future, but I'm just saying. And since I did this with the Equestria Girls movies when I first reviewed them in 2016, and when I re-reviewed them in 2018, I have to do the same thing with this movie. You know, every time I think about 16 songs in this movie, I'm going to assume that this movie is trying to beat Rainbow Rocks on having more songs while also being good at the same time, but it's always debatable on which movie's songs are superior. The opening song of this movie is The Tale of Stephen. It's a good introduction to this movie, just like the Equestria Girls movies centering around what the movie is mostly going to be catered about, not to mention the theme of music, so I can get the impression that this movie is going to be like a standard Disney movie, at most. Let Us Adore You, sung by the Diamonds, is somewhat of a heartwarming song when it comes to the Diamonds desperately want Stephen to move in, since that they think that he is still, well, they know that he is still Pink Diamond in the inside. If we actually see Pink Diamond and present right by Steven, I'm pretty sure that this will probably be a lot more awkward, and the song will be mostly catered to Pink Diamond and Steven. So I can give this song credit that if Steven wasn't Pink Diamond all along, then I'm pretty sure that this song wouldn't fit whatsoever in this movie, especially the reprise, but I'll get to that later. Happily Ever After, which ends up being the main theme of Steven Universe Future, is a really good theme for this movie, sung by the main characters Steven, Garnet, Pearl, and Amethyst. If there's one thing that this time skip does, is to actually give more closure and more development when it comes to the development of the Crystal Gems. Granted, it leads to toxic relationships mainly from Pearl and Pink Diamond, but I've mostly addressed that in my review of A Single Pale World, so I'm pretty sure if you watch that video of mine that I've uploaded months ago, you might get my impression on this whole situation. Other Friends, being sung by Spinel herself, is one of my favorite songs in this entire movie. Since we get the introduction of Spinel, not to mention of how deranged she is after being abandoned, it's really interesting to actually see her defend herself against the other gems, not to mention that she's singing most of the time. Granted, there are other musical numbers in other shows and movies that did this trope, but on the other hand, I can say that this song really benefits Spinel's character the most, but there's another song sung by her that we're gonna get to later. System Boot Pearl Final 3, geez, that's like the most difficult song name that I have to remember, is a really entertaining song sung by Pearl herself. Since this leads to the whole amnesia thing, I actually found it really adorable to actually have her sing while also give introductions with the other gems, since that whole memory is lost. Granted, it's not one of my favorites from this movie, but on the other hand, it's still a short song, one of the shortest songs throughout this entire movie. Who We Are, sung by Steven, Peridot, Lapis, and Bismuth, is a really good song, since it's sung by one of the supporting characters who appear briefly in this movie. If you really tell me that this is a song that should be sung by supporting characters in the movie that they're not in that much, I can say that this is really appropriate for them. Granted, it mostly doesn't take back my comment that I mentioned about these characters not getting much development before this movie, especially after Change Your Mind, but at the same time, that doesn't really damage this song whatsoever for me, and I can actually enjoy it for what it is. Isn't It Love, which is technically sung by Garnet, not Ruby and Sapphire, is somewhat of a romantic song for mainly about Ruby and Sapphire. I would say more about this, but at the same time, if I'm ever going to talk about the relationship between Ruby and Sapphire, it has to be required to reviewing one of the episodes mainly about Sapphire and Ruby. This song isn't terrible, to be quite honest, but it's mostly my least favorite songs throughout the entire movie. It's not that I'm oblivious of the fact that Garnet won't be a thing without Ruby and Sapphire, but at the same time, when it comes to Ruby and Sapphire as their own characters, I have mixed opinions on those, and like I've mentioned, I need to talk about them when I get to them in the original. No Matter What, sung by Steven and Amethyst, is mostly a Broadway song in this entire movie, but then again, most of the songs are mostly Broadway. With the relationship involving Steven and Amethyst actually taking full effect when it comes to regaining Amethyst's memories, is actually a good way to have this song have its own unique style. I remember watching all the episodes catered to Steven and Amethyst, and I can say that they really know how to make this plot involving getting Amethyst's memories back would easily work with the song taken into place. Granted, Paul and Garnet have their own songs, but for me personally, this is probably ranked at number 2 if you want to rank on which Amnesia song is superior. Disobedience, sung by Sadie and Amethyst, is mostly a rock and roll song, and this actually reminds me more of Equestria Girls Whimper Rocks than anything. Granted, it's mostly the guitars, but at the same time, I consider this mostly something that can easily complete one of the songs against Whimper Rocks, but not under Our Spell or Welcome to the Show. Those songs are too good to be beaten. And maybe other songs. But all in all, I actually found this song, even if it's not one of my favorites, it's still really entertaining to listen to rock music, since this is the only rock music song throughout the entire movie. Independent Together, which is one of the Amnesia songs for Paul to get her memories back, is mostly the least favorites. Not to say that it's boring or anything, and I can understand that Greg and Steven are trying to work together in order to have Paul regain her memories, but at the same time, it honestly feels like more of a way to have Greg and Steven fuse together, which I really didn't like the fusion whatsoever. And even with Amethyst and Paul fusion, it just didn't work out for me. And since that this movie is mostly focusing on so many songs, this is one of the issues I have, and that's probably why there shouldn't be as many songs as it needs to be in this movie. If there's a chance, well, I pick which song that shouldn't be in this movie, it would definitely be this one, and it would have been better off if it actually happened in the future series. But then again, Paul will probably still have amnesia throughout the entire time, so I'm pretty sure they had to do what they could in order to have Paul regain her memories in this. Drift Away, being sung by Spinel while also having her memories return, is a really great song. Granted, I don't know which song is better when it comes to Other Friends and Drift Away, but to give this song credit is that we get to see the backstory of Spinel, not to mention her reaction when she finds out that she was abandoned. Let me just tell you that the fact that there's no other person in the galaxy that actually found Spinel on this planet for so many thousands or centuries of years, then I gotta guarantee you that Pink Diamond probably knew that there was no one who's going to rescue Spinel whatsoever. That just makes me believe that Pink Diamond is way more toxic and deranged every time I watch this movie. And by this point, if the show did continue, then the whole character will probably get a lot more worse and worse. Found being sung by Steven and Spinel is one of the songs that I didn't like. It's not boring, but it didn't need to be in this. Considering that it's mostly shipping feud between Steven and Spinel for the fanbase, but on the other hand, it really doesn't do much, and it just leads to more whine time in this movie that could have been much more better if it was mostly a conversation, just a normal conversation. So just like Independent Together, I don't consider this song really needed in this entire movie, but we're getting to one of my favorite songs in this whole movie, and I will admit, it is needed in this movie. And that song is True Kinda Love. This song being 5 minutes long, which takes up like 5% of this movie's runtime, or 3%, I think it's really better executed than all the other songs. Well, aside from Other Friends and Drift Away, those songs can't be topped. But for a song sung by Garnet herself, and considering that Garnet is a really great singer that she's sung multiple songs before this movie, it never disappoints me, especially for how much the other characters are trying to save the citizens from major destruction. This song, along with the music into it, is probably one of the best that this show can do. And since that we actually get to see Steven singing towards the end, it actually makes the song a lot more memorable than I give it credit for. It leads to the battle between him and Spinel, and with this lead to another song along with Steven gain his powers back, I gotta say that the following song actually has so much of a purpose in this, especially when it gives Steven more development when it comes to the story of his life. Granted, I would discuss of how much that this show is mostly about Steven, but I digress. Change being sung by Steven is basically a Steven song when it comes to Steven's personality, since that he's just trying to help Spinel, since that he wants to change for the better. But on the other hand, it doesn't really work out considering that Spinel is so deranged for the fact that she is completely abandoned from Pink Diamond, and the fact that Steven is mostly the cause of all this. But at the same time, it's really not the case. Along with this leading to Spinel finding Steven that she is entertaining to him, I gotta say that this is one of those moments where Spinel actually deserved better in future. And I just don't understand why people actually found her mostly enjoyable in future, because she ends up like Pinkie Pie, except that she lost most of the development. At least Pinkie Pie was mostly sane in some of the episodes when she's taking the situation seriously and whenever she's suppressed. But considering of how the forced development settling on Spinel was in the future, jeez. I have so many essay videos I can do involving this, but at the same time, I got nothing. Literally nothing. And I've already talked about her in my future and Change Your Mind comparison earlier this year. The reprise version of Let Us Adore You, sung by Blue, White, and Leto Diamond at the end of this movie, and the fact that they're taking Spinel to the planet, I can say that it's a good way to show some respect towards Spinel, but at the same time, I really wish that there was some kind of episode that we can actually see centering around Spinel's relationship with the Diamonds, because even if people may debate that she is fine for who she is in future, I still can't get over the fact that she was butchered for the most. But I can say that the reprise version is somewhat a good reprise. As for the finale of this movie, it's a fantastic finale, with this being mostly a reprise of Happily Ever After. It's a good reprise, and let me just say for the fact that this was originally going to be how the series comes to an end, I can actually prefer this ending over Change Your Mind and Future's finale. But at the same time, with this movie comparing those other shows, it's gonna be mostly a difficult comparison, because movies, even though they mostly set up the finale like We Bear Bears, it doesn't really lead to much of a good impression regardless, since that this movie is mainly catered to everything getting back to normal, except that we don't get to see more evolving around the characters. Mainly Steven, if you know what I mean. But then again, Cartoon Network wants more from this show, and with this show nearly coming to an end several months after the premiere of this movie, I'm pretty sure that they did what they could in order to make Future somewhat successful, but at the end of the day, mostly claustrophobic and mostly unfocused. So that's really all the songs I have to talk about in this entire movie. And honestly feels like the earlier days when I reviewed songs from one of the Equestria Girls movies, but thank the Lord that this is out of the way. As for this movie as a whole, I really enjoyed this movie. One of my favorite Cartoon Network movies, which isn't saying a lot since I didn't watch a lot of Cartoon Network movies. If there's any point of any newcomer who watches this show and expects more, even if they didn't get most of their wishes, then this movie is mostly for you once you're done watching all 5 seasons of this show. Granted, there are some elements that I'm missing out on this movie when it comes to discussion, but on the other hand, this video is way longer than it needs to, not to mention the other projects that I have in store for this month of Summerpalooza 3. And as for me talking about more Steven Universe, it's not gonna be about Steven and Connie the next following months or so. I'm probably gonna save that for 2022 or the beginning of it, because at this point I need to put my focus on other characters instead of just one shipping thing, because I've already talked about 10 episodes of this, so I need to talk about something else. Not to mention that doing the week of Steven Universe isn't really much of a good idea, considering that I do have other plans on doing weeks when it comes to my own choosing. I give Steven Universe the movie an 8.75 out of 10.
Let's get this started again. Me and my whole crew.